Okay, so Samsung's S26 Ultra might actually be in trouble because some users are reporting having issues with their phones, and it's probably not the issue that you're thinking. This is not a problem with the battery, it's not a problem with the operating system, it's not a problem with the cameras themselves, but it is an issue with the seals that are protecting the phone, including the cameras. But what is actually happening with people's phones? Well, apparently some users are having an issue with their cameras once they go through an extreme climate change. For example, going from warm to cold or going from cold to warm, which is actually a valid scenario because a lot of people live in cold environments and can actually go from cold to warm just from switching from their car to the exterior or going from a building to the exterior. I mean, if you live in New York City, if you live in Canada, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this issue may not affect people that only live in cold climates. It could also affect people living in very warm climates. For example, a beach. If you live in a beach, you probably go from extreme warm in the exterior to a very cold environment with air conditioning. There hasn't been an official statement regarding this by Samsung, so we still don't know if this affects every single S26 Ultra or if it's maybe just a couple of lots in certain parts of the world that have been affected. But some YouTube channels have actually been trying to test this, and some of them have gotten mixed results. For example, there's a YouTube channel from Spain called Tecnonauta, which has actually been known for being a little bit controversial, but what they did was put an S26 Ultra and an S25 Ultra inside the fridge. But before putting the phone inside the fridge, what they would actually do was perform a stress test. That way the phone would be extremely warm and then go to an extreme cold. And what's actually interesting from their video is that the S25 Ultra had no issue whatsoever. The cameras weren't damp and no humidity went inside the phone. But the S26 Ultra did get damp cameras and could actually be suffering from internal damage. Not only from the humidity, because if the seals aren't properly on this phone, it means maybe dust, maybe sand, or even salt from the environment could go into the internal components and eventually damage the phone. I still don't have my own S26 Ultra, it hasn't arrived yet, but I'm waiting on it to actually perform these tests. So if you're new around here and you actually want to see me do these tests, well, make sure you subscribe, drop a like, it always helps out quite a bit, and I'll let you know once I have the phone and I can actually test it for myself. But I do have another content creator friend which actually asked me to remain anonymous because he did get the phone from Samsung, who actually performed this test for me. And what he did was actually put the phone warm inside the freezer, put a bag of ice on top of it, and after 15 minutes he took it out of the fridge and had no issue whatsoever. So that's what I mean about getting mixed results. But that's not the only issue surrounding the new S26 Ultras. If you're having this issue with the cameras, my main recommendation is actually take it for replacement. It doesn't matter if the dampening disappears eventually, but this means that the seals aren't properly on the phone. So it could actually get damaged eventually. So you're better off just getting a replacement, or maybe just even getting your money back if you don't actually feel comfortable with this information. But that's not the only issue regarding the phone. A lot of YouTubers actually come out and said that when they got the information from Samsung, Samsung told them they were getting a 10-bit color screen, which may not seem like a big deal, but could actually be quite a big deal for Samsung. So a lot of reviewers use this information in their main review because as reviewers, it's pretty hard for us to know if a screen is 8-bit or 10-bit because there's not much of a difference when you're looking at it directly. You can only tell in certain scenarios. For example, when you're editing certain kind of colors or when you're watching certain type of content. For example, HDR. If you thought you were buying a premium phone with a 10-bit color screen, well, it turns out you were actually buying an 8-bit color screen, which you heard from your trustful reviewer, like for example myself. So if you're thinking about buying an S26 Ultra because you want for some reason the 10-bit color screen, well, think again because it's actually going to be an 8-bit color screen, which is actually weird because Samsung makes a lot of these screens for different companies. For example, Apple. Yeah, Samsung makes a lot of screens for Apple, and all the premium iPhones actually have 10-bit color screens. So Samsung does know how to make 10-bit color screens and is actually making 10-bit color screens for other companies. But why won't they put it on the S26 Ultra? And I actually think this could be for two reasons. One of them being the privacy display on the new S26 Ultra, which is a brand new technology that they're not used to developing and is probably a little bit harder to maintain on a 10-bit color screen or even a little bit more expensive. So having this privacy display function might actually require the cost to go down to an 8-bit color screen, which is what I actually think. And another reason could be that screens are simply getting a lot more expensive for Samsung. For example, the new trifold from Samsung has just been discontinued globally. I thought maybe they were going to make it an international launch, but apparently you're not going to be able to get the new trifold because it's just going to disappear. That means screens are getting a lot more expensive for Samsung, and they're just probably not earning enough money from this business, and making a phone with 3 screens just makes no sense as a business. Samsung's not the only one that's been suffering from this in the recent market. You can also see it applied to TVs. For example, now that Sony is actually almost completely sold out their Bravia line out to TCL, because screens and TVs are one of the products that least margin get on the market. That means companies make TVs and earn the least from them compared to other products. And that's properly the panels on them, not just the screen, not just the TV, not just the phone. The panel itself is probably too expensive to produce, and companies that produce screens are just not getting that much income out of them. So those 2 reasons might actually be enough for a lot of people not to buy the S26 Ultra. But I'm pretty interested. Do you already have an S26 Ultra? Have you had any issues? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Drop a comment below, and also let me know, are you planning on buying an S26 Ultra? And after everything I just told you, will you still purchase it? Also, if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like, it always helps us out quite a bit. And maybe check out this video over here, which I think you might like as well.